And welcome back to Hannity on this Friday night. We continue now with the final installment of my interview with the one and only Donald Trump. Let's take a look. I spent more time than anybody in the media on the issue of Reverend Wright and Bill Ayers. He was asked one question about Bill Ayers. Oh, he's a guy in the neighborhood. And then we discovered he started his political career in Bill Ayers' house. He gave speeches with him. He sat on boards with him. Okay. So,
and he acted like he hardly knew.
Hardly knew. And his answer was he's some guy in the neighborhood.
Yeah, some guy.
Some guy.
Some guy that wrote his book.
This is a guy that's unrepentant about bombing the Pentagon, the Capitol, and New York City Police headquarters.
Horrible.
And on 9/11 of all days, he had that in the New York Times. Media ignores it. Reverend Wright, I was fortified by him. He drove around listening to tapes of him. He is, you know, like family to me. And then, of course, he got thrown under the bus. There's a picture in that church magazine.
Both of these guys hate Obama because he dropped them. And you know what? There's one thing. I'm like a loyalist. I have people that, you know, I try to be loyal to people. He's a very disloyal guy because he could have stuck by Reverend Wright and he could have gotten away with it.
How does he stick by a guy that says GD America after 9/11?
You know what? He could have said, gee, I like the guy. He differs from me. So he could have done something. He dropped him like a rock. And Reverend Wright supposedly is just incensed right now. Okay, incensed. Who cares? Bill Ayers, bad guy, but a brilliant guy. I'd love to find out who wrote that book. Because you know what? Without that book, he's not president. You know, that book was so brilliant.
What does it tell you about...
That he became president because the book was so great. Everyone said, oh, look at this guy, look at the book.
If Donald Trump was hanging out with mobsters and doing business deals with mobsters, real estate deals, wouldn't that, your associates matter in terms of people's perception of you before you become the president of the United States?
Well, the Tony Resco thing is the thing I least understand because if you did the deal, if I did the deal, if anybody did that deal, we'd, at a minimum, not be in office and probably be behind bars.
If you and your wife were on or your wife was on a magazine cover with Mrs. Farrakhan, who I think is a vicious, virulent anti-Semite and racist, which Michelle Obama was on a cover with Mrs. Farrakhan. He lives 2 blocks away from Obama. He's within the radical community in Chicago. Is that a legitimate question? Did you ever meet him? Do you know him? And would that have an impact, do you think, on the American people in terms of him?
Well, I think it would, but I just don't think the press. You cover it. A couple of people cover it, but most of them
I don't have access. He won't come on this show.
Well, most of them don't cover it. Most of them don't cover it, and it amazes me. It amazes me the free ride he gets. As an example, when I talk about the Bertha issue, and it's not my favorite issue, believe me. But when I talk about it, I have some reporters, you could see they're visibly angry at me for even bringing it up. But there's a real question. You know, I told you before, when I first started, I assumed he was born here, when it was first dead. Now, I have a real doubt. So they should have a real doubt, too. They protect him. They're protecting Obama. Tony Resco, I mean, why aren't they out there looking into that matter?
I did. We got a lot of heat during the election process because we brought up all of these questions.
They never gave Resco a chance to rat him out. And yet anybody else, they let him rat out.
They would have had Woodward and Bernstein, you know, over there every day.
And you know the funny thing, if I'm a reporter, hey, look, if I'm a reporter, I want to be Bob Woodward.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be Bob Woodward. They could be Bob. You could have Bob Woodward if they found out about the birth certificate, if they found out about Tony Resco. They could be Bob Woodward.
Look, I said in the last election, journalism died in America. They will be much tougher on you. Their scrutiny will be much tougher of any Republican candidate.
And every time they're tough with me, I'm going to bring up investigate Resco.
By the way, is this the difference, though? I mean, you
Sean,
taking on these issues.
Sean, let me just finish this. Yeah. Because they will be tough. Here's the problem. I've done hundreds of deals. Hundreds. I've done transactions and deals by the hundreds. I've done great. Okay? I mean, I've done, you know, mostly great deals. And they will be tough on me. Here's a guy who did one deal. One deal. But they'll go through every deal. Did the secretary dot that I? Oh, gee, there's a typo. Therefore, Trump did something wrong. It's really terrible. You know, I've always heard that a very successful person cannot run for political office, okay? And I understand it. But the country's in such bad shape that I feel I have an obligation to do it.
And you're willing to open all those books?
Yeah, I open my books. Hey, look, I'm going to do a financial disclosure.
Yeah.
Assuming I run, I'm going to do a financial disclosure. And by the way, the papers submitted to me are not big enough.
All right. Donald Trump,
it's been great
to see it. Really appreciate your time.
And I love your show.
Thank you. Thank you. And coming up, actor and Bob Beckel's brother, Graham Beckel, is here to talk about his controversial new film that hits theaters today. But first, Bill Ayers is back, and you won't believe the outrageous comments that he made this week in a radio interview. We've got the clips and reaction from radio talk show host Larry Elder. That's coming up next. Retired University of Illinois professor and unrepentant terrorist Bill Ayers is back and still as unrepentant as ever. Now, he joined my friend Larry Elder on his radio show yesterday for an epic interview, and things got heated, well, to say the least. Just listen to this.
What do you think about the fact that I think you're a terrorist? What do you think about the fact that I think you're a degenerate? You're a degenerate who ought to apologize for what you've done. That's what I think.
That's certainly your opinion. That's fine. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. But
obviously not. You live in a country that apparently has forgiven you, allowed you to go to University of Illinois and teach and work for the very government that you tried to attack in the 70s. It's really quite remarkable. It's quite remarkable that you walk around, your head held high, you try to attack a police building, the Pentagon, the Capitol. You're not in jail. You never spent any time in jail. It's remarkable.
You are absolutely have drunk the Kool-Aid, and you think anything your government does has to be terrific, but it's not.
I'm talking about what you did, Mr. Ayers. Lots of people protested the Vietnam War. Very few people blew up police stations, blew up the Capitol building, blew up the Pentagon.
I understand, and I never justify it in the book, and I never say that it was terrific, and I admit that we crossed lines of legality.
You never said it was terrific?
Wait a minute. Never. Read the
How about saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. I apologize. I was wrong. It was immoral. It was unjust. I could have killed somebody. I was wrong. How about that, Mr. Ayers?
And joining me now, the man who conducted that interview, my friend, national syndicated radio talk shows on Talk Radio 790 KBC, and a syndicated columnist, the one and only Larry. I am so jealous. That was great radio, great stuff. Well, how did you get it?
I have no idea why he came on. My producer, Jason Rose, called him and said, would you like to come on Larry Elder's show? And Ayers said, sure. And when my producer said that, I said, does Ayers know who I am? He says, I don't think he does. I said, does he know what I want to talk to him about? He says, I don't think he does. I said, trust me, he won't come on. 15 minutes before the interview, Sean, Ayers sends him an email and says, what does Elder want to talk about? I said, okay, there it is. I said, tell him I want to talk about his book, Fugitive Days, about his attempt to blow up buildings, the fact that he's unrepentant, and his relationship with Barack Obama, and whether or not he wrote Barack Obama's first book. I said, tell him that. He won't come on.
What did he say about the first book?
Well, we never got to it, Sean. We went to DEFCON 5 right away, and you heard the interview. Yeah. We never got to it. But anyway, when he told him all that stuff, Ayers said, oh, okay. I mean, he's amazing. 40 years, he's walked around, made a living, tenured professor at a government university. The irony is just so thick you can cut it with a knife. He's retired now, on a pension, and has never said, I'm sorry, never said I was wrong. Absolutely astounding.
You know, I got to give you a lot of credit, because I don't think anybody, and this was so frustrating to me during the campaign, because if you bomb the Pentagon, if you bomb the Capitol, you bomb New York City Police Headquarters, and you're not sorry about it. And of all days, he wrote he wasn't sorry about it, unrepentant, on 9/11, 2001. And as far as I know, Larry, you are the only one to have ever had the opportunity to confront him, or the courage to confront him this way.
Well, you know that on September 11, 2001, he was interviewed by the New York Times, front page story.
Yep.
And he did not do anything differently than those 19 terrorists did on that fateful day, Sean, by taking planes and running them into government buildings and crashing that one in Pennsylvania. What was the difference fundamentally? They had a beef with American foreign policy. They resorted to terrorism. He had a beef with the Vietnam War, and he resorted to terrorism. There was no difference between what he did and what those hijackers did on that day.
Well, and this goes to the heart of our media. You know, when Barack Obama was asked one time during the campaign, once, this is a guy, he started his political career in Bill Ayers' house, the unrepentant terrorist. He sat on boards with him, gave speeches with him, and when asked the one time, his answer was, well, he's a guy in the neighborhood. Now, let me play the segment where you talk about the Vietnam War and him trying to explain away why he planted bombs in America.
A majority of Americans opposed it by 1968.
Professor, a majority of Americans opposed it at one point. You are right. Very few of them, however, tried to bomb a New York City police headquarters, or tried to bomb the Capitol building, or try to bomb the Pentagon.
Right.
Now, let's just take it from the top. Then, do you regret setting those bombs?
Not at all. And the reason
You
is
don't.
no one was hurt, no one was killed, property was destroyed. Meanwhile, every week that the war went on, 6,000 people were killed. Now, let me ask you this. If your government enters an illegal, immoral, unjust war and is killing 6,000 people a week, how do you stop it? What would you do?
I wouldn't blow up. I wouldn't blow up buildings.
Now, they came within seconds in one of those bombs in the Capitol of killing young people and a family. So, and there were part of the Weather Underground members building bombs were killed. What does this tell you about Barack Obama? What does this tell you about the media, Larry?
Well, it says a lot about Barack Obama. It says a lot about the media. It says a lot about Bill Ayers. This was a legitimate campaign issue. And frankly, Sean, we ought to also direct a little bit of our ire toward John McCain. He virtually refused to deal with this as an issue. When it was finally coming from his mouth, he said something like, I don't care about an old washed-up terrorist or something like that, as opposed to making it a legitimate issue. And the larger issue is what you and Donald Trump were talking about earlier in your show, Sean, and that is the pass that Barack Obama has gotten. And not just that stuff, but he said he gave tax cuts to 95% of American people. Well, 30% don't pay any taxes at all. How do you give somebody like that a tax cut?
Yeah.
And the stimulus bill, he said he was going to save or create 3.5 million jobs. He certainly hasn't been called on the carpet for it. He is still been getting a pass by the mainstream media.
You know, I got to tell you, when I was doing all the airs and Reverend Wright and Resco stuff, I can't tell you how many people that said, Hannity, you're going over the top, and then only later said, well, it turned out you might have been right on all this. Let me play one more cut, and this is a really important interview, Larry, that you did here, for a lot of reasons, because he's still unrepentant. I still want these questions answered. I want to know if he was friends with Louis Farrakhan, considering Malik Zulu Shabazz recently said that when you sat at his table, Mrs. Farrakhan and Mrs. Obama are on the front page of a magazine together. Nobody's ever asked him that question. Let's play him trying to claim that John McCain, who spent 5 years in a POW camp, is a war criminal.
The Weather Underground indeed did take responsibility for a handful, maybe a dozen, extreme acts of vandalism. That's true. That's true. And so compared to what was going on every day in Vietnam, including the illegal bombing of cities, which John McCain took part in, and he is, of course, a war criminal, as is everyone, as several people admitted when they came back, including the Vietnam Vets Against the War. War crimes were not a matter of choice. They were a matter of policy. Bombing vast stretches of countryside because you had extra ordnance. That's what John McCain did. So he actually killed people. I actually didn't kill people. Who's the one who should account for themselves?
Unreal.
He is a terrorist. He's unrepentant in his terrorism. You got that out of him in this interview. He's Barack Obama's friend. Barack Obama gave speeches with him, sat on boards with him. Barack Obama starts his political campaign in this man's house. Nobody cares.
And notice how
we're nuts.
And notice how Ayers referred to it as vandalism. You know, like he was a graffiti artist, like he was a gangbanger just marking turf. Vandalism? Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
When you put Ayers, Wright, Resco together, this is why, if people have asked, why do you think Donald Trump's doing so well in the polls? You know why I think he's doing well in the polls? Because he's fighting. He's talking about things that we're told we can't talk about. I think that's why he's doing so well. People are saying, amen. Somebody's saying it.
Yeah. Well, but look, the birther thing, I think Donald Trump has raised some very interesting questions. The people that believe Obama wasn't born here are not going to vote for him anyway. The larger question, again, Sean, I come back to it, is the pass that Barack Obama has gotten. He has gotten better publicity, fewer hard questions, more softball questions than any presidential candidate I have ever seen. And if the media has anything to do about it, they will reelect him. I remember when Chris Matthews says, as a journalist, forget about whether or not he's a journalist, as a journalist, it's my job to make sure he succeeds. That's how they feel.
Yeah, well, the thrill up his leg the whole time. You know, look, I think probably he was born in the United States. I believe he was. But the idea, just produce the stupid thing and let's move on. I find the whole way they've handled it odd. All right, Larry Elder, great stuff. Honestly, this is an important interview. Appreciate you taking time to share with us.
You can hear the whole interview on LarryElder.com.
You got it. And by the way, I recommend everyone go there and listen to it. And Larry, we'll talk on radio next week. Thank you. Let not your heart be troubled. Our great American panel is next.